Much to talk about this morning with Claire Purcell and Nigel Nelson, who are reviewing our papers and whatever. Where do you want to start, Claire?
Oh, should we do what's going on in the Commons today?
It's a big day, yeah.
It is a big day. And I think this is going to cause some real problems for Keir Starmer. Now, there is some parliamentary procedure that we have to get through. And there's the SNP motion, which has been put down regarding a ceasefire. Labour have also now put in an amendment to that motion, and therefore so has the government. So it is now down to Sir Lindsay Hall, the Commons Speaker, to select which amendment.
How does he make that decision? This is because this becomes hugely political in and of itself. I mean, he clearly has a colour, you know, and therefore he has a view and a position. So how does he make that decision, which had such big implications for his own party?
Yeah, absolutely it does, and he has to be able to put that to one side. Being the Commons Speaker comes with the responsibility of neutrality. You have to look at what the precedent is, and the precedent would be to normally accept the government's amendment.
Oh, right.
However, he can choose to have both the government and the opposition amendment come up to vote. So I don't know which way he's going to go. Nobody does.
He doesn't know which way he's going to go, does he?
He doesn't, and there is a meeting with his clerks around 10:30, which is his normal time, so we should be able to find out sometime after 11 o'clock this morning, any time up till 11:30, as to which amendment is going to be chosen to be debated.
Nigel, I'll tell you just where I stand on this one. You know, Starmer, when we heard him speak at the weekend at the Labour Party conference in Scotland, and, you know, there's going to be a full ceasefire, whatever. I would have more respect for the man if he actually spoke in plain English and said, you know, up until now, I wasn't sure. I had my doubts, but recent events have made me think, But he just flip-flops and changes and...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's explained this actually as well as he should, but it is because events have changed.
Yeah, and those events being Labour in Scotland and the SNP.
Well, there are political events, obviously, that have caused him a problem, but also the fact that Israel is about to invade Rafah. So here was a safe space in Gaza. That's where people moved to. Half the population moved down there. It's the southernmost city, and now it's about to be invaded with a ground offensive. So the situation has changed, and you're talking about a bigger humanitarian disaster on top of an already big one.
Which brings me to Prince William. Should he be getting involved in this or not?
My view is that he shouldn't, because he should be above politics.
OK, but he should be above party politics, but pretty much all of the parties would share those exact sentiments that he very carefully chose, which are that the loss of life is regrettable and that Hamas also need to stop their violence.
They're not the successor to the crown. That's the thing. He is. Why should he be having a view on this?
Well, he went to the Ukrainian embassy, didn't he? And showed his support for Ukraine. How is that different?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also been
to the occupied Palestinian the bad guys in this, whereas Putin was obviously the bad guy. And the problem about what's going on in the Middle East, you can't pick a side and
But he hasn't picked a side.
No, I'm saying, but as soon as you get involved in this, people pick the side for you. That's the problem. And you know and I know, all you've got to do is ask a question and there's an interpretation put upon you that you've made a statement.
I mean, however you look at it, it is political. His intervention is political. And if you're going to stay above politics, as, you know, the constitutional monarchy is meant to, and he's the heir to the throne, keep away from anything that's political.
How is it not political to go to the Ukrainian embassy when Putin has invaded Ukraine?
I think that Eamonn's right there. There's a slight difference there in that...
the bad guy's obvious.
The bad guy's obvious, yeah. Putin is the aggressor.
It's a political issue.
You can't just pick your issues because you think, well, that's OK, because we all know that Putin is the bad guy, so therefore it's perfectly acceptable for the Prince and Princess of Wales to have
you're
an
less
opinion.
likely to get the same amount of flack for it. Who's going to come out and say, it was awful, he punched Vladimir Putin in the stomach after this. It was really terrible what he did to him. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody.
No, but who's also going to suggest that his wording is incorrect when you say that humanitarian aid, water, food, medicine needs to go to both sides?
No, you would be surprised. You'd be surprised.
I think it's incredibly brave.
But it requires to stop. The whole thing is there. It requires the war to stop. And there is a contentious situation about that. I think, as I said before, I think that Prince William's sentiments are absolutely right, and there should be a ceasefire, but he shouldn't be saying it. And obviously it is a contentious issue because there is a war going on.
Now, tell me something, say something, both of you, about Julian Assange. We had his brother in there just before the break. Day 2 of whatever's going on. I don't know how long is going on or what part of the process all of this is, if it ends here, doesn't end here or not. I'm fed up listening to him. I'm fed up of him being called a journalist. And a lot of people are just saying he was the thief.
Well, also, it's costing taxpayers an awful lot of money just in court time.
Yeah, what an indulgence. You know, do we really care about this man?
Well, I mean, I don't, and I don't think he's a journalist. And you've got to remember what he actually did. He dumped a whole load of material on the internet without proper checks about what the effect it could have on people elsewhere. And the argument seems to be, oh, that's free speech. But free speech carries with it a responsibility, and your responsibility there is to make sure lives aren't put at risk, your national security is not put at risk. It doesn't mean you can't expose things, that's what journalists do, but they analyse material beforehand and decide what could be damaging to individuals or damaging nationally.
But does it set a precedent for the US, for example, to use espionage laws to come in and prosecute and indeed extradite somebody based on actually what they're claiming are journalistic actions? I mean, the National Union of Journalists, for example, they accept him as a journalist. I mean, he might not be card-carrying, but they believe that this is a journalistic freedom of press issue. Yeah. Is there a concern about all this? Because clearly President Obama thought there was, which is why he commuted Chelsea Manning's sentence in the States.
But I think that was just slightly more risk-averse, and I think the longer this has gone on and the more you look at the level of risk to those countries involved as to what Julian Assange has done, then I think the case becomes a lot clearer. And I think extradition is the only way forward. You cannot have that kind of behaviour with no consequences. National security has to be at the top of the forefront of somebody's mind if they're going to release these kind of details, and it seemingly wasn't. There are consequences to that, unfortunately, and he has a case to answer.
Big move on the assisted dying situation, Nigel. The Prime Minister, the Express are reporting, is saying that he will change the law if it's what MPs want.
Yes, and I think probably that there's been so much debate about this. Its time has now come. So what he's saying is this is a controversial issue for MPs, and on the basis of that, he will give MPs a free vote on whether assisted dying should be made law.
Claire,
we do Martha's rule. I was keen to do this story. We're a bit short on time, but I really think we ought to cover that. Are you happy to do this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is basically about allowing parents to get a second opinion and trust that instinct that so many parents say they have after, tragically, Martha died from sepsis.
That's right. Martha Mills was a 13-year-old girl who fell off her bicycle and had an injury to her pancreas, and her parents took her to hospital and believed that she was getting the symptoms of sepsis, and the doctors wouldn't listen and they wouldn't do anything, and it was found that if she had gone into intensive care a lot earlier, her life may have been saved. And this, I think, is really important, that you are now going to be allowed, encouraged to get that second opinion, to have your voice. And I think that it is only right for a patient or parents, relatives, loved ones to be able to have that voice in medical care and not have doctors seen as gods whose decision is final. I think if you have the feeling that something is wrong, you should be able to challenge the information you've been given.
Parents always challenge everything?
Parents will always think they're right and they don't listen to professional opinions. Whether we're dealing with health or whether we're dealing with schooling of their children or whatever, little Jimmy will always be right ahead of anybody else. I mean, this again is a dangerous one. I can understand why, if Martha was related to you, you would want the law changed, but
I think there's a lot to be said for a parent's instinct about whether their child
and I do, and I think that you should have the right to have it reviewed. And if it is the case of believing little Johnny is very ill when actually the doctor in the beginning was right, then what is the harm in having a second review?
Money,
a second
cost, time, waiting lists.
The pilot project showed that they weren't overwhelmed. So, in fact, when they've tried this out, it is a rarity rather than something that happens all the time. The only thing I've got against this is that you're going to use teams in the same hospital. I'd have thought to actually make this a proper...
To be truly independent, you should be outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about retirement here in the couple of minutes that we've got left. So the chef Rick Stein, he says, look, he employs at his restaurants people in their 60s and their 70s as well. He is not a fan of early retirement because he thinks it contributed to his father's mental health problems, and his father threw himself off a cliff, basically, and so that has obviously stayed with him. What do you think, Claire?
I think that this is the way that we all need to think. I think we need to reassess the way we look at age in the workplace or age generally. And it's quite good of Rick Stein to use the tragedy that befell him as a son to lose his father so early on, and the fact that he knew that his father missed the routine of work, the camaraderie of coming into a workplace and dealing with people.
And because the pension age is going up is the other important thing, that if you're going to put the state pension age up, and they're talking about 71, there's a huge gap between people who have left their jobs and before they can claim a pension.
But Nigel, 71-year-olds having to wait tables and things like that. I mean,
no,
that's...
if they want to.
If they want to, because they feel they need the money or whatever. But, I mean, that's a heck of a job. That's a very physically demanding job. It's highly admirable. More employers should do it. But I do think that's a tough gig.
We're all defined by what we do, and when you don't do anything, you're not defined. I'll leave you with that thought. We'll say goodbye to Claire and Nigel. They'll be back in 40 minutes. Here's Alex.